You know how in some movies, when they end, you exhale for what feels like the first time in 2 hours? I finished this movie 2 days ago, and I feel like I'm still holding the inhale in my chest. It Was Just an Accident tells the story of an unassuming mechanic who is reminded of his time in an Iranian prison when he encounters a man he suspects to be his sadistic jailhome captor. Panicked, he rounds up a few of his fellow ex prisoners to confirm the man's identity. If you're not familiar with Jafar Panahi, who wrote and directed this movie, he's one of the most prominent Iranian filmmakers of all time, and he has made movies that are extremely critical of the Iranian government, and that has landed him in some very hot water. He's been arrested multiple times. His family was arrested and detained at one point, and he just got out of prison recently, and he immediately went to go make this movie, but his filmmaking privileges were revoked. So he made it illegally in Iran. And for that reason, much of the film is shot in very nondescript locations or in the interiors of cars. He and his crew had to be very careful. He made this film with a very limited cast and crew, many of whom aren't even professionals. And I think knowing what Panahi and his cast and crew were putting on the line here definitely enhances your appreciation of the film and communicates how important it was to them to get it made. If you can't tell, this is a very political film. But although it's about a specific government, I think the themes are universal. Even if you don't know anything about the Iranian government, which I certainly don't know much, I think you'll find a lot here to relate to because it's about the human spirit. It's about fighting back against oppression. It asks big questions such as, is it worthwhile to violently fight against your violent oppressors, or does that just continue a cycle of abuse and make their response even more severe? All of the performances in this movie are really good, and as I said, many of the roles are filled by non-professional actors, but nothing comes across as amateur. There was not a hint of inauthenticity throughout. It doesn't feel like acting at all. It feels like you're just watching events as they actually take place, which is the highest compliment that I can pay to a movie. A lot is asked of the performers here because the film is not flashy in its composition or in its form at all. So much of this movie is captured in very wide shots with multiple characters on screen in a way that feels almost like they're on stage. In this case, Panahi really makes this film more of a showcase for the writing and the actors than anything else. And particularly in the final 15 to 20 minutes, the performances and the storytelling are so engaging, and it all culminates in my favorite final moments in any film of 2025. The final shot in this movie has lingered with me and haunted me since the credits rolled. But a quick note on this filmmaking. There's a reason that I really wanted to bring up what these people were up against trying to get this movie made, because in the moment, I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel like the movie was a bit lacking in variety in its composition, in its editing, and its cinematography in general. So much of the story is captured in master shots that go on for like 5 or 10 minutes. And while that certainly elevates the performances, I found that I was kind of distanced from the movie because there's never any filmmaking techniques incorporated that put you in the moment. You're just constantly an observer, and that's a totally fine way of making the movie. But I found myself feeling deprived of a close-up or reaction shots of these characters as they're processing certain information, because for such a large portion of the movie, you're kept at arm's length. And then in between those very long and pretty immobile takes, you'll get some handheld cinematography, usually in the interior of a car or some very confined space, and it all felt very rushed. And it felt rushed because it was rushed. And so it's hard for me to fault the movie, but at the end of the day, I do want to give you a report on the finished product. And I would be lying if I said that the filmmaking didn't make the story drag every once in a while. So I want to go a little bit easy on the movie because the circumstances were kind of dire when it was made, but at the same time, in the theater, I did feel my attention slipping just a little bit because there's none of the cinematic bells and whistles that are at most filmmakers' disposal being incorporated here. However, I do feel like it's a little bit thematically resonant because you understand, if you know the background of this film, why things feel so stagnant and immovable. In a way, the limitations serve to make the movie's themes resound even more because you see these characters who are moving freely in the frame, but they're kind of confined to this box. And within those limitations, they are trying to exact revenge against the system that has mistreated them so much. But all they're really able to do is take it out on an agent of the system. It's not going to accomplish anything. They're not going to push the needle very much. And so the stasis of their situation is captured pretty well by the fact that the frame isn't moving very much for the majority of the film. It feels very encumbered and inhibited. Like, it's just not free to move about as it pleases, which ended up kind of working. Overall, I was very reached by It Was Just an Accident. While there's nothing particularly engaging going on formally, the circumstances under which this movie was shot more than justify the approach taken here and make it almost a thematic choice. This film, more than any other that I've seen this year, feels like more than a movie. And for all of those reasons, It Was Just an Accident gets an A-. Go see this movie. Absolutely give this movie all the attention that you can. We talk a lot about bravery in art. I feel like this is real bravery. He knows exactly what's at stake here. He is risking imprisonment, his family's safety, to get this thing made. It's so clear that he thinks this is what he was born to do and nobody can get in his way. He is facing down incarceration, maybe worse, and I think you should all go see what he considered worth that. When he goes back to Iran, and he's going to because it's his home, he's going to prison. They have, in absentia, sentenced him to another year in prison for making this movie. And you know what? They can put this guy in prison. They can do a lot worse than that. But this movie's not going anywhere. I think this is going to be around for a long time, and I think everybody should contribute to that. If you have seen the film, please let me know what you thought of it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you at the movies.